First of all, thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us.
I think you gave me a choice, Chuck. If I didn't, you'd write all that stuff about me. I don't want to write.
Perfect. Talk a little bit about, you've been retired in Columbus for how long now?
20 years. In July, it'll be 20 years.
So, like many people who live in Columbus and the Chattahoochee Valley, you're here, you originally came here because of the Army.
That's right.
When was the first time you ever saw Fort Benning, Georgia?
Let's see, July 1961. When we pulled in, it was kind of, my God, where are we at here? What's this all about? But you know, it all worked out fine. But you know, second lieutenant, I don't care where he went, is going to be a little overwhelmed. At Fort Benning, because of all the activity and they immediately absorb you and get you into training and all, you have to adjust pretty quickly. So we adjusted pretty quickly to the post in the area.
Columbus and Fort Benning, Georgia is where you would spend more time than you would any point in your life. What would you have said?
No way. No way. You know, let's face it, when you come here to the basic course, there's not a lot of great things going on. I mean, keep you in the field a lot, and then you go to Ranger School, and you know, you don't have a lot of fun here, your initial tour. But you establish a great foundation here, and that's the way it should be.
How many combat tours did you serve?
Well, in Vietnam twice, and then of course I went down to Panama on Just Cause. That was kind of a brief thing.
Talk a little bit about Vietnam. Obviously a very different era. What were you doing in Vietnam?
Well, you know, almost what led up to Vietnam was almost more significant in the sense that when you come in the Army, it's probably different today for lieutenants, but when I came in the Army, I had no thoughts about actually engaging in combat. I mean, you join the Army and you do with Army things, and there's a possibility you might get involved in combat, but when I signed into the 82nd, my first tour, General Conway was the division commander, and I went to his office, he talked to me and he said, Lieutenant, when I was a lieutenant, my commander told me I might see combat. He said, I'm telling you, you will see combat. And so he kind of got my attention, but you know, lieutenants, that's why you come in the Army. Not that we're warmongers or anything like that, but if you're not prepared to go to war, why isn't you in the Army? You know, I used to keep this thing on my desk, and I inherited it from General Burr as well. It said, think war. And it wasn't there because I was a warmonger or anything like that. I just wanted my people to realize, don't lose sight of what we're all about. Your training, everything we do, we should transition, we should shorten the transition to warfare. It should be something simple, quick that we can do. We don't have to go through a great machinations to get ready for war. We should be ready for war. And initially it was 90 days you're going to be in Vietnam. Well, at the 90th day, we're in the field, we got this message, your PCS, permanent change of station. And so I was there for the rest. So toward the latter part of my tour, the battalion had made some contact with a Viet Cong unit, and they called my company up and said, we need to fly in to be engaged to help us with this fight. And so we got in helicopters and went in, and it went into a pretty hot fight. And I got shot in the stomach not too long after we were on the ground, when we were trying to assault the positions and maneuver around the positions.
How does getting wounded in combat change your perspective of life? Or does it?
Well, you know, it's an interesting question. When I got hit, I thought I was hitting the leg because I had this burning feeling in my left leg. But actually what happened is the rounds according to what they tell me, I had 3 rounds hit me, and the one that came out of my back severed nerves to my left leg. And so I thought my leg was, but I was kind of blown open here. And so when I looked down, I could kind of see some stuff you don't ordinarily see. and so this thing's worse than I thought, you know. And then the beauty of the human body is the pain gets so bad you black out. You know, I didn't have any anesthesia, but I black out. and then I'd come back to again, and then I'd go for a while, and then I'd black out again. So I was going through that, but in the times I was conscious, I never worried about dying. I had an inkling of it when I heard my executive officer on the phone with my battalion commander. I heard him say, "It doesn't look good." And I didn't know whether he was talking about the fight or me, but
either way it went good, right?
And so I thought about, I didn't think about dying, but I thought about, well, here I am laying in this rice paddy, but my gut's all open. I'm probably going to get stomach cancer or something stupid like that. That's what I was thinking about. And but I never feared that I wasn't going to come back out of it. And it took a while to get me out because it was still, the fight went on for a while. And I wasn't the only one open. There was several other units that got wounded. And they finally got us in and got the helicopter in to get us out. And one of the things I remember is one of my soldiers, they come running, he was just a rifleman, came running to my aid when I got shot. Then he got shot, but he got killed. And that was something that was negative. And then they put me on a helicopter and got in, and I when they got me to the MASH, the Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, they put me in a helicopter and they ran me right to the front to the OR room when there were other soldiers there. And I thought, God, I am in bad shape. But those were my soldiers, most of them, and they didn't want to go through till I went through for some reason, And so that's kind of why they ran me up front and in front of the line. And so I didn't realize there were all my soldiers there, and that's why it was happening. And obviously none of them were really critical. Then I went through the evacuation system all the way back to Walter Reed.
And then you went back to Vietnam, right?
I went back to Vietnam. That happened in '66. I went back to Vietnam in '69.
So how long did it take you to fully recover?
Oh, probably almost a year. I took a PT test about 9 or 10 months later that I could pass with no trouble. And so it was, the biggest problem I had was numbness in my leg. I had a little trouble controlling my leg, but it eventually came back.
Talk about, did that experience profoundly change you?
Probably did, and I didn't realize it. It kind of, war became a very serious and persistent thing.
Let's jump forward in your military career. Mm-hmm. How does somebody become a 3-star general?
You just keep re-enlisting. If you're lucky, you get it. No, I think there's so many variables. I don't know how that happens. I really don't. I think it's a function of the people that work for you and the people you work for, taking care of you. And I worked for a lot of good people. I learned a lot. I was blessed with soldiers that made me look good. It's just a combination of those things and being in the right place at the right time. I was the second tour in Vietnam when I was getting my orders to come back. I assumed that I was going to go to Fort Leavenworth, and because it was time. I've done everything. I did everything I can, and so I got orders for a recruiting command in Richmond, Virginia. And I said to myself, man, there's something in my file I don't know about, because that was not the best assignment in the world, to go to recruiting command. And before I went to Vietnam the second time, I was in ROTC, which is not considered career enhancing either. But there I understood, I was kind of healing up and all. But this time I said, wow, I am dead in the water. And so what happened was that the Army was having some real challenges recruiting soldiers. And the Chief of Staff of the Army, said, I want you to get a bunch of hard-charging majors right out of combat, and I want you to put them in recruiting command and get that thing straightened out. And he did, and we did. We turned recruiting command around, and I think what it was, there was a certain complacency that sat in. It was tough being a recruiter back then. And
that was at the tail end of the draft, just the start of the
it was not popular. And
was this during the draft?
Yeah, during the draft.
Basically, you were the guy charged with running the Olympic effort here.
The Olympic softball competition.
How'd you get that job, and was it a good job?
It was a great job. I had a lot of fun. Could hardly call it a job. It was an opportunity, and I was blessed to get it. Matt Swift wants to talk to you. You got some time to talk to him? And I said, yeah. He said, well, can you get down there this afternoon? I said, yeah, I'll go this afternoon. And so I got down there, and Matt started talking about the Olympic venue, and then Frank Martin. I talked to Frank Martin and all, and he said, would you like to do it? And I said, yeah, I think it sounds like fun. He said, okay, you start this afternoon. Well, we're just moving in the house.
How'd that go over?
Well, Joyce is used to it. She's had to do that before. And then the shocker, I think, was that they said we kind of put the budget together, see what you need. So it took a little while to do that. Came up, and I estimated rough. I think that we're going to need about $6 million to do this right. And then I was told we need to raise it. I never raised a nickel in my life. I got to raise $6 million? Maybe let's re-talk this thing. But the Bradley Turner Foundation has always came up with half of it. Took a lot of pressure off. And so it was just building from scratch. It was used a typical military organization, put staff structure, designated people for the responsibilities they had, and then trying to figure out how to work with this mass of volunteers that we had. They didn't care whether I was a general or a private. I mean, they were going to do what they want to do. And like I tell people, the volunteers, probably the best thing that happened to me in this transition, because, if you try to regiment them, if you try to force things down their throat. I mean, in the military, we're going to do this, we're going to have it done by this time. It doesn't work, And if they didn't do it, what do? I can't fire them. And even if I fired them, they wouldn't go home because they were going to stay there because they wanted to be part of the Olympics. And I was working, on the same gate, for example, you could have a lawyer and a homemaker. I mean, so they're people. They're all good people, great people. And so my challenge became, one is how do I herd them in the right direction? And then the other one was, how do I utilize them all? They all wanted to be on the third base line. I mean, everybody needed, right? And we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. The transition I was making from the military to civilian life, had I not worked with those volunteers, would have been very painful. They made me realize real quick that I'm not going to do it the way I'm used to doing it, so I have to change my leadership style. And if it wasn't for them, I would have never survived as city manager. There's no way. I used to tell people when I met somebody before city manager, I'd say, how you doing? And they'd shake hands. And I said, now I'm city manager, I meet somebody and I say, how you doing? And they say, I'm doing fine. I'd like. So it was a question.
So everybody had their hand out.
Everybody wants something. I mean, they don't come down to your office just to shoot the bull and talk about last night's Braves game. They got a purpose. They want something, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's overwhelming sometimes, I can say. And so when you're working with the council and the mayor and all the other stuff, you just can't make quick decisions. If you do, you're gonna get yourself in a mess. I learned that quickly.
How did the general do working for Colonel Portishev?
Well, we did okay. I mean, he's a smart man, a very dedicated man. We got along okay. Leadership style is a little different, but he and I a lot alike in some ways.
And y'all have similar backgrounds.
Well, both from New York, both Citadel grads. Both had daughters that were teaching school at Fort Benning. I was roasting him one day, and I was all of a sudden in the middle of the roast. I stopped and said, "My God, I'm roasting myself." But I mean, there's a lot of sibling, and I love it. I mean, the Portichevs are great people, and Bobby sort of threw the ball to me, and kind of let me move things forward and keep him informed and things like that. So I was fortunate to have to work for both of them. I mean, neither of them try to micromanage me or tell me how to do a job.
Different leadership is something. I mean, define leadership.
There's no occupation, there's no career, there's nothing that has a corner on leadership. You know, leadership is every day, everywhere, every place. And the question is, how do you react to it now? You know, the old pony in the barn thing. You look for the pony in the barn. If you go and it smells bad, something's wrong. No, it may smell bad, but you can learn something. There's a pony in this barn. Let's find it. And so you learn from people how to do things, and you learn how not to do things. I learned, you know, Fort Benning is the greatest leadership institution in the world. You know, out there in the mud and the mountains and all doing that. The Ranger School, middle of the night, you can't see your hand in front of you, and I say, Cavezza, you're now the patrol leader. The patrol leader got killed. Holy mackerel. That's a leadership opportunity if I ever saw one, you know. But that's the kind of stuff that you learn in the field. You learn leadership in the halls of the Pentagon, where you're working for and with people who have one thing in their mind: how they're going to make general officer.
Let's go. How important is Columbus State University to the Columbus and Chattahoochee Valley?
Extremely important. Frank Brown would tell you his charter was create a middle class in Columbus, Georgia, and I think that's what it's done. But also, it's gone beyond that. It's a very credible organization now, and it's you can go there and get a good education. I think a city without a quality university is you know, there's a void there. There's something that's missing. Columbus State sort of fills that void. It's our hometown university, and I think the people in Columbus have embraced CSU.
They've invested in it too.
Yeah, they own it. They own it.
How important is Fort Benning to Columbus and the Chattahoochee Valley?
I think it's critically important to Columbus. You know, you can't have one without the other. I mean, to put Fort Benning here without a Columbus, what would it be? It'd be a Fort Polk, Louisiana kind of thing, where no
that ain't good.
They ain't good. To have Columbus here without Fort Benning, this is going to sound funny, but there's an intellectual void, because I believe it or not, there is some intellectual value to Fort Benning. I mean, you know, that is the font of all knowledge for the Army. This is the base piece for the Army, and they've got some of the best, sharpest instructors in the world. Some of the best officers in the Army come through here. A lot of them retire here. I think Fort Benning makes a great contribution to Columbus. What they have learned. Well, you know, I came up with 10 lessons learned in life that I use periodically, and I think probably, though, the most important thing is, don't ever think that your success is something that you did necessarily. Recognize that because of others, you got that success, you achieved that success. I think that's critical, because the higher you go in rank, the easier it is to like yourself more. You know, and the more you like yourself, the worse off you're going to be. So people should try not to like themselves too much, and to give recognition to the people who really get the job done, who make a difference. And I think that's probably the most important kind of thing.